catastrophic event looms on the horizon. Planet X, a huge planetary body or stars heading our way, described as the Great Red Star. They say this is now time for Nibiru to return. Welcome to Truth versus Authority. I'm Roderick Martin, aka the Symbolizer, TV personality, UFO investigator, award-winning podcast host, backed by Truth Seekers, streaming right here on YouTube and reaching thousands of podcast listeners across 126 countries worldwide. Thank you for all the love and support. I'll keep bringing the truth. Get ready, because what you're about to hear, you may not believe it. You know, I have been really studying and looking at the return of Nibiru for quite some time. And the more that I've done research, the more I've looked into the 3,600-year window that Zachariah Central talks about. It just tells me that we're in for a surprise to see who's going to be part of that planet and who's going to be there. Because we already know we're talking about the Annunaki. We're talking about the Annunaki coming back and being from planet Nibiru. However, I think we still want to know what they look like, because we already know that Annunaki was supposedly the responsible for the giants, the Nephilims. And then, of course, as we get down to the bottom of human creation and civilization in Sumer and all these other places. However, what we don't know is, what do they really look like? And we're going to talk about that, because if you already know what we talk about here on this channel, you will probably already know where I'm going to go with this tonight as we go down this particular area when it comes down to the Annunaki, or they lizard people, right? You know, we have to look at it, and I'm going to show you some evidence or information that I found that's going to say that, wait a minute, they may just be not just giants, or they made the giants, but they also could be those people we call shapeshifters or whatever. So anyway, we're going to get into that tonight. And before I do get into that tonight, I'll start with just the whole outline of saying Planet X is what some people call it. There's a lot of different names. Nibiru, I think there was another name in my notes here, was called the wood, wormwood. All they have a lot of names when it comes down to this particular red star planet that it's on its way. But one thing's for certain, a lot of people state that there's going to be some type of catastrophe if this happens and when it happens, and it's looming on the horizon, as they say. And they're talking about the planetary body, or it's a star. And most people are talking about, you know, it's been here before. It's just kind of making its return as it comes back, which is probably explaining a lot of things that we have dealing with here and all this. But wait a minute, before you get your stuff into a bundle or whatever you want to say, it's not happening tomorrow. It's not happening next week. And it probably most likelihood, and 1,000%, if I was to be a gambling man, to say it's not going to happen, while all of us, everybody who's watching this video, still resides on this particular timeline. I'm going to use the word timeline, because you may come back. You may come back when it happens, because it's possible that this goes on. But anyway, welcome to the channel. I'm Roderick Martin. If you haven't been here before, make sure you hit those alerts and hit the like button and all of these things, because we talk about a lot of stuff here when it comes down to what I call the word on the street. And we go into a lot of things. If it goes into shapeshifters, those lizard people, this is the destination for that information, if you so choose to explore down that rabbit hole. Well, anyway, also you can find me on 9 or 8, 10 different, 11 different TV shows. If you want to look further, Google me, come back here to the show, or whatever you want to do. But either way, I'm here to tell you that we got a great conversation when it comes down to the Annunaki and who they are. Most of us know, but what do they look like is what we're going to discuss tonight. And what you're about to hear, you may not believe it. All right. So once again, I got my notes in front of me. I've been looking at this thing for quite some time. And when you start reading all of the information, especially when it goes back to the serpent or the serpent part of our religion and all of these things, and what relates to the serpents, we're talking about reptiles and all of these things. But it's far-fetched when you start thinking about the Annunaki, because when I first got into this particular information, and I'll be the first to admit, for me, people was told the Annunaki were people that looked like me, and they was here on Earth before and all this. And I was excited about that. This was, again, in my infant stage of truth seeking when I first became very curious. And this was far past the UFO stuff, because the UFO stuff I was already in. But then when I started going deeper into origins, the creation, and all of those things, and I was excited. Oh man, okay, we got the Annunaki. I'm an Annunaki on Anu or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And then when I start reading more and more, and I start reading the scaly skin stuff, the stuff that was in the biblical times, and all of the different stories, and some truths and some not true, I'm like, no, I'm not one of those. And I'm like, nah, I'm not one of those. Now, of course, now, as I know, when you start looking back into the stories of the Anunnaki, and you start going back to the Bible and all of these things, you begin to understand that there has been a change in the data when it comes down to who and what these stories are. And you can go all the way back to Sumer or wherever, or Sumerian tablets is what we're going to use. We can say when they start talking about those tablets, it was supposed to be the true account of the origin of the Christian Bible when it came down to this. And when you start looking very close, you realize that there's been a lot of rearranging in the information of the text of the Sumerian tablets, one in particular of how the changes went from being what I call a polytheistic religion to monotheistic, and for those of you, meaning there was multiple gods and now there's one God. And so it's clear that that's been changed throughout the biblical text. And so therefore, that will tell us that there's a lot of things when we start to hear over to the right side of things could be a little truth versus what we hear on the other side. But either way, that's fine. Well, we're going to go through that all tonight and pretty much put some stuff together. Well, anyway, so Doomsayer says it's only a matter of time before a star could be a planet X. It could be some meteor or some kind of wandering objects that possibly could, smash into the Earth. Now, we've seen many movies like this, many movies. And one in particular was my favorite. I think it was Armageddon, a typical name, Bruce Willis. And then, about them. And they was going up there to save us from this big rock and all these things. And that's just one of many movies that said something is hurling its way to Earth. Now, if you start thinking about Nibiru and you start thinking about all of the space explorations and all the things that they're doing, then it makes you wonder why they're trying to get off this planet. They're trying to get to be what we call an interplanetary species and maybe live out there on some asteroid rocks, maybe space tourism, but regardless, get to Mars or recolonize different areas. And as it could be because they know something we don't know, but we're going to explore that, right? However, there was a book published that predicts that Planet X will blindside the Earth soon, causing what they call untold chaos. In fact, with the Earth literally tilting on its axis. So supposedly whatever it's going to do is Nibiru is going to come into the orbit. Earth is going to be like, it's chilling like this, but then it's going to start leaning like this. I don't know if that means we are going to be walking and we're going to need a V8. A little humor there. But regardless, it's supposed to be catastrophic. We're talking tidal waves. We're talking tornadoes, which we already have those in Texas. I don't think we need another one, but tsunamis and all of these things. Now, I'm way inland and way up in Dallas area, so I don't think that, the hurricanes and tidal waves is going to come all the way up here. But when you start thinking about the Great Deluge, which we'll get into, everything got flooded. Everybody. and the Anunnaki was responsible for it. And hopefully when they return with the planet X and come with Nibiru or whatever, they do not plan to say, hey, we need to wipe these pesky little, human roaches out or whatever. You never know what the plan is. But either way, there had been a plan and they've done it in the past. But once again, astronomers, a lot of doomsday sayers, they all point back to Zachariah Sitchin. So if you haven't read some of his book, go look up his book. I think there's one, the 12th Planet or something he calls it, or whatever. I don't have it in front of me. But if you are a fan of Zachariah Sitchin, you just go look it up. You'll find those books and everything else. And once again, you know the rules here. Let me lay it out real plain here. I have two virtual boxes, one over to the right, the virtual spelling box, over to the left, virtual grammar box. But I'm going to mix things up a little bit tonight. I'm going to switch them around. Grammar box over here now and the spelling box over here. So if I mispronounce anything in particular, don't hold it against me. Don't be like, you don't know what he's talking about, because the data and the knowledge is here. How it comes out may not be interpreted or into the mind of your ears and all that, but you have the freedom to go into this grammar box and process the information, because it's all conscious. You know that, right? So you take the conscious, and that way you don't hold it against me, and you bring it into your ear. Now, if you still hear it wrong after you have access to this, it's on you. It ain't got nothing to do with me. You find something misspelled, go in there. I got unlimited letters, all the letters you can use. In fact, you can take some with you to work if you want, take them to bed, whatever you want. You can take you can take letter SEX to bed with you if you want. I got unlimited letters for everybody to take it to bed if that's what you want. Just don't hold misspellings against me. Another little humor. Let's get in more into the conversation. Now, they said it's going to come from the other side of Pluto. And on Earth is a 3,600-year cycle. Now, supposedly this caused manifold disasters each time it makes its past. And they say now it's time for Nibiru to return. How many of you heard that already? Put it in the chat if you've heard that there is a return of the planet X that is coming, and by the fact that it is Annunaki who are living on this planet and they're supposed to come back. Put in the chat. I'll look over here in a second, give you enough time, because there's a delay here. But put in the chat, how many of you heard that? And what are your thoughts about it? Put your thoughts, and I can put it on the screen and bring us into an active conversation tonight when it comes down to this. Now, this is prophetic, though. So hear me out. There are scriptures that talks about this that comes back. Now, as you know, I'm going to tie this into the reptilian idea, okay? And that's where it gets a little stretchy, because most of us think of the Anunnaki, these big, strong warriors. And you got to remember, those are the Nephilims, the giants, who are the crossbred between the Anunnaki and the human women. And supposedly they came here and they created the abomination, which was the giants. And then, so they create the giants, which is the offsprings there, supposedly, at this point. And so we're talking about an evolution. We're talking about some type of genetic DNA tampering, where they took the man, us, who, Homo sapiens or whatever you want to call us, bipedal man walking around, or maybe they said, oh, these some ape-like Homo erectus, whatever. There's all kind of stuff. Wherever that breeding took place, someone figured out that we're going to make what they call new slaves to mine gold, to build their resources. And this is probably where we hear that we supposed to have all this worship gene and everything else in us. And of course, now ultimately the reptilian brain, which we all talk about here anyway. So the scripture, though, since the Holy Bible does in fact has a prophecy about a catastrophe, and Earth changes to occur, what they call, it's going to change. Let me find my glasses, because there is a star coming. So let me kind of read this to you. We ain't having church here, but let me read it. It says, well, maybe I'll put my church voice on. And the Lord, no, see, I'm already bad right there. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And the name of the star is called wormwood. And many men is the word. And that was in Revelations. I think that's chapter 8, verse 10 through 11. So this is in the scripture that's saying that there was a great star from heaven and it burned as though it was a lamp. So somebody read it, the stories came back. However, we're going to get into, I got some I want to show you, but and before I get to that, I'll show you an image and some things that give us some context of how closely related all of this is. Anyway, so make sure you hit that like button as well on this video. But sometimes most of these people maintain that there's a specter will occur, back in the day. Let me back up and give you a timeline. It was supposed to have happened 2012. If you remember, there was big movies about it. There was, all kind of speculation. And then before that was Y2K. If you were living around about that time, I was, and when everything shut down and computers couldn't function, AI was not here at this point. So we just couldn't get things to move over. But 2012, because of the Mayan calendar and all this stuff, was showing that there was just no more. It just stopped. So they figured, everybody was like back then, well, maybe the world, that is it. Why the Mayans didn't go no further? Well, hell, they ain't even here to go further. Maybe they all checked out before they did an update, because we still want to know where they all went. Once again, that was based upon the return of Nibiru that was supposed to be happening. Now, because we're well past 2012, it is said that it could possibly be 2078. Or you still hear rumors now in ufology, me being a UFO investigator, that there's something on its way now, and they're talking about 3 or 4 years from now. But however, that's supposedly a rumor that the satellite has picked up some type of brigade or something anyway. But there's just so many stuff out there. And then there's others saying it is happening, but it could be thousands of millions of years from now. Now, one of the things that you want to think about is no one's saying it's not happening. You're not hearing that it's not happening, and you didn't hear that it did not happen. So that alone should take us down a rabbit hole to be like, whoa, what is really going on? Because the possibility is there, and most people saying that this is the 10th planet in the orbits near Earth once again. So once you get here, we got 10 planets. All right, so I'm going to go into something here that kind of go back to, because Planet X has what they call the secret doctrine. And this is what brings us into the show tonight, because it's really important to kind of put emphasis on this secret doctrine. Before that, I'm going to show you something that we're going to talk about here. I'm going to put an image on the screen. And this is the part where I say you may not believe it, because now as we go deeper, all of this stuff is starting to tie in. And I think that we're possibly living in an area of some of the biggest stories that ever been told, okay? And we can call them LIEs, whatever you want to call it. But the whole point is that a lot of this stuff, if you keep going down, and if you're going to search for the truth, and you're going to accept the truth, then a lot of these things are heading us down a road that is really incredible when it comes down to this. And so I'm going to give you a little shock to the system here. And let me check the text if any of you said anything earlier. Jarrell said, I thought the interstellar object that flew through our solar system was a scout for Nibiru to see what was going on before it was coming. Oh, you're talking about Amur-Noor or whatever. No, Amur-Noor was supposedly be the reasons that what is coming now, which is supposedly something different. So I won't send y'all on that road. We have to do a different show for that. However, you remember Nibiru have already been here. Now, okay, you know what? It's possible what you're saying, Jarrell, could be explainable, because why wouldn't you? You know, we haven't been there in 3,600 years. Why don't we send some out to know what we're getting ourselves into? They could have civilization there, could have advanced so far that they could have now had some type of technology to defend themselves, that we can't make them slaves anymore when we get there. Now, however, what makes you think, we're not slaves now? The system has just changed. So that is possible that we can do that. Nick Sprinkling said, Screw Tape Letter speaks out of a sub-demon named Wormwood. We're not gonna get in that tonight. but it all pays close attention to, it all works together. You do have some correctness in that, because it does work together of the demons, because once again, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but the fallen angels, all of this is part of the same story, and it all clicks in, and then it goes into what we're going to be discussing in the after show tonight. So we're going to have an after show. When we get to the top of the hour, we'll be out of here. Then we're going to go into the Luminous Lounge, where we're going to talk a little more. Actually, we will talk, which will tie into the show tonight, things that we can't talk about out here. But we're going to get into the hidden, what I call serpent secrets and stuff, because this is where it's all going to go. And rightfully so, it is something that I think we should discuss, because this serpent morphs into something more than what we want to talk about today. But we're going to get into it so people understand where we're going. So that is something that we will ultimately do. So we'll do that in the after show tonight. So any of you want to attend there, there's a link in the description. For those of you who have access already, when you click the link, we'll go live in that dark area, because again, there's a lot of censorship going on, and we just can't say a lot of stuff that we used to say out here anymore. We just can't do it. And so we'll do that. All right. So someone has said, what if they named it the fish brain? Well, it's possible they could have do that. Someone says, Roderick, have you heard of Kenny Galactic history? I'm trying to go get an understanding of our history. Carrie Case. No, I have not heard of Carrie Case. Look, I got glasses, and well, let me put them on so I can get that bottom magnifier to see them. But no, I have not seen that yes, it'll be in the Patreon, on the Patreon, Jarrell. Yes, that's where we're going to go right after this at the top of the hour. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Well, anyway, we're going to go. So let me put some on the screen to further this conversation so that y'all can kind of see where we're going to go with this right now. All right. So here you have this is coming from Tex Mars' book. But anyway, what you see here, I want you to look closer, because there are some things that we're going to expand into here in a few seconds. But over here it says the myth of the pagan religions of Sumeria, Babylon, Egypt, often told of lizard-like reptilians and ancient astronauts visiting Earth, mating with women, worshipped by the ancient mankind as possible gods and goddesses. And now many New Age teachers and occultists are gladly and expectantly proclaiming the soon return of these strange hybrid deities. Now, if you look at this picture, you're going to see fishtails, right? So that goes all the way back to the Dogon tribe. And then, of course, you see the Annunaki, and then, of course, the remnants of dragons. But all of it goes back to the serpent and the Dogons and everything else. So if you have looked up the Dagon, which is the fish god, which is the Pope themselves. Okay. Now listen to me closely. And I'm just speculating here, but if we're with me, you're with me. So the Pope itself wears a mithra on their head. And if you turn it to the side, it is a fish head. Okay. Even if you turn it, you'll see the mouth open, and in the way the emblems in that, it's the fish head. They talk about Dagon, the fish god. The Pope does. You see that the Annunaki, the Nibiru, the connections of ancient Babylon, Sumeria, all of these tie back to this remnants that I just showed you, which goes back to the fish gods, which the Dogon tribe claimed to have been, or not claimed, they know that they saw them first. And it makes sense, because if you just got here and your name is Dagon, or maybe somebody changed it, right? But if you just got here and your name is Dagon, and then they turn around and say, well, I'm going to call y'all my people, and you're going to be Dogon, and maybe they mispronounced it and say, okay, now we're the Dogon tribe. There's no coincidence in a bad way for this, right? You can't just make this up. So when you start thinking about it, and now they start talking about serpent imagery, serpent things in the Bible, which is reptilian, and then you start looking at the giants and all of the stories. I don't know. I think it's something fishy or something snaky about the whole stories that we've been told. And that's why in the after show, we're going to talk about that a little deep. We're just going to have a conversation, and I'm going to say some stuff that I can't say out here, But the whole point I'm saying is the Pope, Snake Hall, all of the representation over there at the Vatican, it all leads back to some type of reptile, right? But yet I grew up in a time in a place where you better not talk about astrology and you better not talk about the snake. In fact, if anybody had anything bad to say about you, they will say, he or she is a snake, don't trust him. Where did that come from and why? When all speculation, I'm saying, and the stories that we're talking about, even the Annunaki themselves have stories of them being on long, elongated heads, all of this reptilian, reptile type stuff. Where's the loss in translation, or where is this? And we're, like I said, I just can't wait to the after show tonight, because I want everybody in there. Is, you know, when y'all, the members, when y'all, we need to answer this question. Come on, whatever. I want to thank everybody who's got your copy of the Book of Sacred Secrets. I've been getting incredible reviews on people and how this has been helping people today. This is something that you must have in your arsenal. This book is going to be life-changing for you. It's a downloadable copy, so you'll be able to print it up, print a sheet up, or whatever you want, study, take it to work, give it to someone, and maybe some in particular information. But this is something that you need in your arsenal. Go to the website. The link is right here in the description. It's also in the video as well. You got to get your copy of the Book of Sacred Secrets. And once again, it supports the community. True information is from the cosmos, from infinite consciousness, that you need to learn and you need to have in your arsenal. I want to thank you guys for watching the video. Support the channel, and I look to see you on the next video. And don't forget, again, search for Roderick Martin. Come over to the YouTube channel so we can keep getting this information out. Thank you very much. Well, why is this being so methodical and a place to stay away from? But yet everywhere throughout history and ancient history comes all the way back to the Annunaki, by the way, which goes all the way back to Iraq, which always go back to Iran, which goes all the way back to the cradle of civilization. Now, what's his name? Credo Mutwa. Am I pronouncing that correct? He talks about all of this as well. But yet makes me ask the question, when Nibiru returns, what are they going to look like? Are they going to look like you and I? Now, supposedly, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 says, let's make man in our image, in the likenesses of ourselves. So obviously, there's a bunch of folks talking. So obviously, either we look like them. Correct. Any of you got children, your kids, you don't look like your kids. And nobody walk up to you and say, little Rod, you look just like little Rod. I mean, no. He looks like me. Now, by the way, I don't have any sons. I wish I did, though. Right. But what I'm saying is there some type of truth and hidden truth with the serpent conversations that we need to have? Okay, now I know where it could lead down the roads of the other stuff. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the knowledge, not what it was hijacked, but the knowledge and wisdom and all of those things that comes in that story. So Planet X has what they call a secret doctrine. Now, significantly, now listen to me closely. The Freemasonry and occult world have long been awaiting for the arrival of Planet X. It's everywhere in their stuff, the occultists, and it's also in their secret doctrines, if you go look up some of the papers. So obviously, they have something. Their secret doctrines teach that the ancients once worshiped gods and deities, mighty men of renown who came to earth from the heavens and from the planet star called Sirius. Y'all remember that, right? So the Freemasons know that whatever is happening came from Sirius, Sirius B, or star constellation, we want to call it. The Dogon tribe were the first ones to tell our scientific community, with all of the technology that we have, that there was a star constellation over here And this is where it is. And we're talking about an indigenous tribe who had nothing. You think they just looked up and said, oh, it's something over there? No, something came here and told them. Something was here long time ago within their ancient history. Now, how did it morph from the Dogon tribe to a god called Dagon to a fish god? And if you go back to the Dagon tribe, their god is the same god that the Vatican worship. Now, I'm not saying that we all don't serve the same God or gods or whatever. That's not where I'm getting at. I'm going with the chronological data of who was first, what was first, who knew what before what, and where did it come from. And therefore, that manipulates the story, because already I just mentioned it to you at the beginning of the show that the Bible, which we already know the Sumerian tablets were known to be the original Christian information at some point. However, many and everybody concludes that there's been a lot of changes in this thing. In fact, once again, it has been rearranged. And if I pronounce it right, the polytheistic to monotheistic. And it's all over the place, right? And in fact, I found a whole list of scriptures that said this, and then the changing was this. And it makes you wonder, because it's been revised a bunch of times. God's word should not be revised, right? He's not going to revise his word. Anyway, that's just a whole nother conversation. Now, once again, the Egyptians knew this star, Sirius, as the Dogon and Dog star, and they worship it under the guise of Anubis, if you know who that is, the jackal-headed god. Looks like the dog or whatever, pretty much. And in fact, it's kind of funny. I was going to have a dog named Anubis one time, and only reason I was going to do that because at that time back in the day, I was thinking Anubis was the underworld, whatever. When you go, and I was like, here's my guard dog, and if anybody come breaking into the house, they're getting ready to meet Anubis, right? It's just that you just met Anubis. It's your time. So anyway. And from the name were derived names of chief deities of the Egyptian religion and culture. Osiris, which was the lord of the underworld, which, okay, we said this before. Remember, we did the show on the X. We're going to go deeper into that in the next few weeks because I got more information. But Osiris was the lord of the underworld, and Isis, the star goddess. Okay, so with these two, she'll put us back to a more collective story. But once again, they say Nibiru is on its way. And if Nibiru is on its way, who is on that planet, who's coming with it? And if you go back, the Annunaki is coming with it. And there are not big, giant people that looks like me, you, or whatever. Or maybe because we look like them. However, they're not the giants, because the giants was abomination between those fallen angels and Anunnaki that bred with you women. And I still wonder today, because all of the book says that these men was like mules and horses. And okay. All right. I did listen to a video today of P. Diddy and some guy, whatever. And maybe he was that is off the bar. But regardless of what I'm saying is, I do not know how, for the life of me, that those two cross and began to make giant babies or whatever. Maybe they just came out and or whatever, or all that stuff. But regardless, all of these stories, if there's truth in it, in which a lot of stuff says it is that it goes all the way back to, we need to figure out who the Anunnaki, well, I can't say we need to figure out. We already know. But when this Nibiru comes back, and when it does, and it's going to cause all these calamities and all these things, what do they look like? That's the other part. Let me look into the chat and see if I can catch up with anything that we need to do here. It's Noah and the giants when it comes down to the Anunnaki, okay? The Noah and the giants. Amazingly, the Holy Bible in Genesis 6 describes an early time in the days of Noah, when the star gods, in reality, now we're going to talk about Satan and we're not going to talk, but Satan and the fallen angels, the Nephilims, committed abomination with mating with the daughters of men, producing a hideous hybrid. Now, these were supernatural offsprings, all right? And the Bible called them giants, and it's because of the unimaginable wickedness and the sins of the hybrid man, beast, giants that God decided to cause a flood over the earth and destroy them all. Now, Noah supposedly had the good stuff, and he says, go ahead and go, and if I'm not mistaken, go replenish the earth, right? Didn't he tell him that? So maybe there was a bunch of Noahs and all that stuff. But either way, all I'm saying is the myth, and I'll put it back on the screen here, that they're saying the possibility, the myth of the pagan religions of Sumeria, Babylon, and Egypt often told lizard-like reptilian ancient astronauts. All right, so the question for the audience tonight, what do you think about that? What do you all think about reptilian connection to the Annunaki? Do you think there's some truth in it? Or do you got some little speculation to it? Or do you might say, well, Roderick, that's just ridiculous. I want to know your thoughts, and I will put it on the screen, because I think it is so important that we now begin to look a little deeper into the theories, the information when it comes down to it. Now, I'm not saying the fact that we all could be some extraterrestrials. And of course, we are going to do a show on the Rh negative blood soon. But the whole point is, what are they hiding? What is it that we're not supposed to know as a massive collective when it comes down to what is happening with anything that has to deal with the true origin of these Anunnakis, the true who they are, identity, or should we say what they look like, where we have, again, Vatican Hall representing snakes and deities everywhere, which is supposed to reside over the majority of the churches. Y'all get where I'm going? And then we have all of this, and as you know, we talk about it here all the time, and I tell you every day, they're after our energy, and it's worse than that, okay? They're after our energy. So the book of Sacred Secrets, we're talking about it. It's everything is energy now. I don't care what it is. There's a link in the description. Go get your copy, download it. Make sure you do it today, and then print it up like I did, put it in this book, and protect yourself, because I'm studying more about food. Everything is designed to keep us in this low vibration, because there is something bigger in a plan when it comes down to it. So we're looking at this. So the Anunnaki was like, okay, we're going to keep them as slaves. We don't want them to know their true identity, of course, as the more spiritual gods within them. How do we do this? How do we block the very senses that's connected? And when they do that, they start creating what we are in today, from media, anxiety. Then you have people controlling it, because once again, if you go to all of the scriptures and everything else, they left 300 people behind, and supposedly they're still here. And because they're not on the same timeline that we're on, they could possibly still walking around. Now, 300 originals, which, was what I'm saying, walking around 5 billion people can easily hide, and they're not giants. Remember, the giants came from the interbreeding, all right? So that's where that mistake came. That was an abomination. So obviously, when those fallen angels came down, they were not too big, tall, so to speak, maybe a little taller, but not compared to as giants. So that makes sense. Would answer my own question, how the mating occurred. Okay, that occurred, but the aftermath. So if that 300 still here, and then 300 still up there looking for them, being in what we now going to allude to the soul trap, okay? Because there's this soul trap here, right? And that they can't, or the souls can't get out. That's a whole nother story. We talk about that in another couple of videos. Go look them up. So all of these stories starts coming. Now, once again, the focus tonight was the Nibiru, the return of the red star, who's in it, which are the Anunnaki, and then all of a sudden they're supposed to be lizard people. And once again, you can go back to the Ube, you can go back to all of these different artifacts, everything. Now, I know somebody might be like, well, what do we care? Well, I care because if that's the true essence and the true information, is there power in the information for us to know knowledge, the power? And why do they go to so much to block us from the power, from the food, blocking our energies, all of this stuff? And there's something there. Okay. Rich says, hi, Roderick. Stuart Swerdlow says the reptilians are from Draco and Annunaki are from Nibiru. Okay. Also, he says Nibiru was destroyed in 2003 by the Illuminati from an energy weapon from his book on world history. Huh. Well, it's interesting to know because, all right, we could say that the Anunnaki, yeah, because they would say, you know, that the reptilians from the Draco star system. Okay. Now, the Illuminati, which now we know there's plenty of fashions for them, of factions or whatever we want to call it. Now, we do know that there's original bloodlines, okay, Rich, which are called the blue bloods. In fact, they supposedly actually blue color in their bloods. These are original people who are still walking this earth from that lineage of the crossbred between those Nephilims and the Anunnaki and the human Homo sapiens or Homo erectus, whatever erectus, whatever. Regardless, that their bloodline is still here, and supposedly that's what was put in charge to monitor the earth while they left, right? And now we call it the royal bloodline in most cases. Okay, so there's a lot of story when it comes to that. So other than that, we need to really look into it. Like I say, now Dr. Strange says Afro-Draconian star system. All right, so that goes to show that there's a lot of information out there that we all could be privileged to begin to investigate. But one thing's for certain, we're going to agree that the Anunnaki, I guess, came from Nibiru. Now, once again, you know, it goes back to what we were talking about, where it says the myth of the pagan religions, Sumerian, Babylon, and Egypt, often told lizard-like reptilian ancient astronauts visiting Earth. So maybe what you're saying or what Stuart is saying, Swerdlow is saying, both Anunnaki and both reptilians came here. And maybe that was the fight, the war, right? Maybe that was the war in heaven and that came down to earth. Maybe there was it. But either way, we know the serpent stuff exists. So we can kind of go from there. The blue blood hybrids turn into Illuminati. They didn't turn into the Illuminati. They are, and that's why it's real important, Rich, for people to understand. And I've told y'all on many occasions that here's what you may not expect. When you start thinking about the rappers and all these people saying they're in the Illuminati, they are in the Illuminati, but they're not the original Illuminati. And I stress that all the time. And I've always put up this particular map here, which, by the way, I'm going to put this on a shirt in the next 2 or 3 days for just a temporary thing. But anyway, this triangle I had designed, you know, breaking up into the 3 sections here. And then, of course, we have the top, which is the Overlord hybrids, or could be the Anunnakis. Then you deal with where we are in our civilization of the rulers. And then we come all the way down to the controllers, and pretty much from there. And make no mistake about it, we got a reptilian hotline, 888-345-9121. If anybody got a story or something you want to tell, share, or whatever, or you can come on the show as a guest, feel free to call that number and do that. We're here for you. So let's go back and see. All right. So even there's other people saying that those two could be separated or not the same people. So we can look at that. All right. So there are more scriptures talking about the prophecy and the return of these, what they call satanic mighty men, these evil giants in the last days, yet not as gods, but as devils. This comes in Matthew 24, verse 37 through 39. And it says, Jesus warned that there is the days of Noah, and so shall it be Christ come once again. Now, moreover, they're talking about the return of the abyss, the stars, the falling from heaven shall be accompanied by incredible mind-boggling signs in the heavens. As of earth, the prophet Isaiah prophesies that the mountains shall fall down and the planet will reel to and fro like a drunkard. I'm sorry. There you go. Mispronunciation and grammar. Take it over to the grammar box. All right, so we got all this biblical stuff. Do we believe what we read in the Bible is true? The stories, and we already know they've been altered, reversed, but at some point there is some truth in this thing, and they all speak of the return. And then, of course, the story can shift, because we already know that the story of the virgin birth is one of the greatest stories ever told. It's been in 26 different religions. The same story is told with different names, by the way. Maya and all, it's just so many different names. So we know how rumors and things can go. But the fact remains that the stories are aligned is enough to connect the dots. And then, of course, we go back to whatever's happening. So, with that being said, let's just take a vote. 1 for yes, 2 for no. Annunaki, reptilians, yes, 1, 2 for no. We're just going to go there. I know some of you already said your piece, but let's go there. Put it in the chat. 1 for yes, 2 for no. And we can go that route. You get what I'm saying? We're gonna do that. Ube was civilization before the Sumerian, but in the same region, 6,500, because the statues of the reptilian figures weren't breastfeeding. Okay, so there you go. We're still, but they still said Sumeria was the crater of civilization, though. A judge by the Sumerian tablets is what they said. All right, so a lot of you saying no, they're not reptilians, they're Annunaki. Okay. All right. So, so that means we're going to do another show pretty soon, because the virgin birth, talking about artificial, that's fine. You know, when you go to court and you are the daddy, you be like, no, how did that happen? Well, it was a virgin birth, but it's your baby. But here's the part that shocked me most, is the fact that there's just so much protection of the connection of the reptilian stuff to the Anunnaki. And why wouldn't someone want us to know the truth? Would be the other part of it. All right, so we got a bunch of no's. April says no. Maya says no. Diana says no. Philly Cat says no. They're not. All right, so okay, so for me, I'm gonna say 1, judging by the stuff that I have. So that means I need to bring y'all more information on that. And I'm willing to do that, okay? I'm willing to bring you more information in there. All right, so we're going to be getting out of here shortly, because at the top of the hour, I'm going to open up our private Luminous Lounge for the Luminous Files, which we're going to talk about the serpent stuff. Well, I'm just going to talk, just with no notes or whatever. We're just going to have a conversation. And we're going to do this in our private area, because some of this stuff we cannot discuss. I'm just sorry to tell you, we can't discuss it. And we just can't. But there is a connection that we're going to look into all of this to find out what is going on. And if you want access, and if you have not gotten access, go to there's a link in the description, get in there and click and come on into, and it's a live stream, but it's just offline in our uncensored area where we can talk and say whatever we want. But before we get to that, though, we can also look at Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's the name of it, in Star Wars. There are just so many stuff out there that just showed us what is going on out here for us to look into it. Now, they talk about the teaching at the very core of the secret doctrine, and man, we're going to go into more of the Freemasonry stuff. So one of the things for me is they're saying that, again, the dark red star is on a collision course to the Earth. And that is something for us to look at it and really to really think about it. And like I said, you're not going to be here. So don't even sit here and start going, oh, let me go build a bunker and all that. Well, build a bunker if you can for other crap that's out there. However, the other mess that you should, like I said, be building a bunker for is very important when it comes down to this. I just wanted to talk about that a little more. We will be back Wednesday. I've now finally got our schedule back in place. So we'll be back Wednesday, and then we will come a little bit on Friday as well, or Thursday and Friday, one of the two, and we're going to go deeper. Now, also stay tuned for some uploaded videos. I've been driving around to different locations. We got a couple of street stuff that we're asking a few people some questions about, some of this serpent stuff that we're looking into, all of this stuff. And, of course, I'm wearing all protection gear right now for show. And we're definitely doing that as well, and pretty much. So with that being said, we're going to get out of here, and I will see you all on the other side in the Luminous now. Like I said, if you want to come over at the top of the hour in 5 minutes, I will start that in the live there. But in the meantime, hopefully you enjoyed the show. Make sure you hit the like buttons and everything else, and you can meet us here in this area, Truth versus Authority, on the screen. And there's a link in the description of the video. And like I said, there's no structure. I'm just going to talk, give you some random rants on serpent stuff that, man, and maybe y'all can answer some of the questions too. We're going to do this as a collective. With that being said, it's been a plum, pleasing pleasure. I will say this because at the end of the day, it is all what I would say about love. And so with that being said, I love you. Hopefully you had a great weekend and all of those things. But if you have not heard these words today, I'm going to say them as always. I love you, and you deserve to be loved. Everybody deserves to be loved. Love is probably the most powerful thing for energy to keep these people from zapping our energy. I know a lot of you have probably got love, like myself. I'm not hearing it in my ear, on my bed pillow, not at this time. But regardless, I love you. With that being said, protect yourself. Make sure you protect your energy, protect everything right now, because things are heightened right now. They're getting very heightened right now. And that's how it is. But anyway, plum, pleasing pleasure. Yeah, I'm out.
Welcome, Truth Seeker. You are no longer asleep. I am Luminous, the Owl of Truth. The world is blind, but you have opened your eyes. Welcome to the fire of esoteric knowledge and truth. You are now one of the awakened. You are now luminous. Welcome to the rebellion. Welcome to Truth versus Authority.